Edwin Lester Linden Arnold was a British writer known for Phra the Phoenician. He was born in 1857 in Swanscombe, Kent. He's son of poet Edwin Arnold and Catherine Elizabeth Biddulph. He spent most of his childhood in India before he went to study agriculture and ornithology, attending Cheltenham College. His first book was the 1877 A Holiday in Scandinavia. In 1890 he published Phra the Phoenician. He worked as a journalist for the Daily Telegraph London until 1908. He died in 1935. Today we will review his 1895 The Story of Ulla and Other Tales. The story of Ulla is written by Ulla the Priest, who was Ulla the Viking many years ago, and concerns how during a wedding feast celebrated by his king, he met a young English girl, and of course the meeting is much appreciated by both. Finding her gone the next day, he looks for her for 10 years, before returning to a life of raiding, and amidst murdering all the men and enslaving all the women of a small town, he sees her on top of a tower, which his own men set fire to. She is the daughter of the lord whom he just killed, and whose son he had slain, and whose town he had burned to the ground. Running up to save her, she still dies when he tries to get her down, and after some years he becomes a monk, but still cannot forget. The vengeance of Dungarvan has John Hackett, a tax official much hated by his peers in Baltimore, pine for young Margaret O'Driscoll. She has a fiancé, John O'Hara, but Hackett sends him off on a sea voyage only to have him enslaved by Algerian pirates. When he nearly assaults Margaret when she refuses him, the whole town wants to hang him, but the iron bar holding the news falls out and he escapes, summoning Algerian pirates to murder all the men and children and drag the women into slavery. But among the galley slaves is John O'Hara, who saves the young woman, the two being the only living people left in Baltimore, after a roof falls on Hackett, giving him a fiery death. A dreadful night has a hunter in Colorado stumble into a hole from which escape is impossible, with the whole floor piled high with dozens of carcasses of all kinds of animals that had fallen in over many decades. Doggedly followed by a gang of wolves also stuck, he finds the body of a miner who fell in some 50 years ago. After a terrible night he is discovered and then blows the thing up with dynamite. Rutherford, the twice-born, has a third son of a wealthy lord living in poverty, before the deaths of his two elder brothers make him heir to the property. But he is also given a letter that says his family stole the title and inheritance. Deciding to give up the inheritance, he goes home one last time, and is visited by the spirit of a man who was himself in a former life, and who was the murderer who stole the inheritance of his brother whom he murdered. Only it turns out he is actually descended from both brothers, and thus is the rightful heir and the heir of those who stole it. A stranger woman has a Spanish woman cast ashore after a ship is sunk near Devon, and who plays two brothers who find her against each other for her own amusement, so that one impales the other on a sword before running away from the family home for 10 years. Her narrow escape has about 40 people married in a mock ceremony, only to realize later that the student of theology they impressed to marry them actually passed his exams, and thus the marriages will be legal. But sadly this is overturned on a technicality, undoing the rather interesting premise. The last half of the book has less interesting scenes and settings. Meg of the Braids has a woman save the man she loves by cutting off her hair and tying it to a rope. In A Fair Puritan, a Crone William's daughter is being forced to marry a man she hates under her father's command by a death-side oath, but is saved by her hated betrothed dying and her lover getting her mother's ring back. The first half of the book is full of grim tales set in many different time periods, but the second half is much more pedestrian and focused on petty romance among fishers and miners.